Recently Panasonic released two new cameras, first the S1R2 and now the S1 II, but the question still remains, are those two any better than the OG S1H? You will be surprised, and we're gonna find out which camera is in the full frame market from Panasonic the best for video, including colors, dynamic range, low light and so many more. Coming up. Hi guys, my name is Paul. I'm a German-based cinematographer and this channel is all about filmmaking, gear reviews, but also DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribe. That really helps the channel. Thank you. So as I've already said, the S1H still has its place for me and I really love that camera. But the newer cameras also have quite a few features which the S1H doesn't. So in this video we want to deep dive into the cameras to find out which one is still the better one. Let's start by body design. So both of these three cameras can't be any different. The S1H is very big, but I really still like it because it has this top LCD screen which you can still check all the features that you want to see, whereas the newer S1 series are much more compact like the S5. So both have their pros and cons, but basically I'm still missing a proper timecode input that you have on the S1H, and that isn't present in the newer bodies, unfortunately. Let's address the biggest elephant in the room, and that is rolling shutter. Panasonic full-frame cameras have been known for having kind of a bad rolling shutter, which I personally didn't find too disturbing in many occasions that I used it in. But we all agree that the S1 Mark II has the best rolling shutter performance of them all. It's 50 milliseconds in 6K open gain, whereas the other ones have around 30 milliseconds, and that's really a visible difference. And yeah, I'm pleased to have it in here. But if we turn on dynamic range boost on this camera, then we have the same rolling shutter as the other cameras. And if we turn on the DRE boost in the S1R Mark II, then we have an even worse rolling shutter. So yeah, but if rolling shutter is your concern, then the S1 Mark II is probably the best camera. The Panasonic full-frame cameras never haven't been really bad when it comes to low light, and these three models are no exception. I'm still probably use them up to ISO 12800, but I would say that especially the S1 Mark II as well as the S1R Mark II are better than the S1H. So I feel like all three of them are easily usable up to 12,800, but here you have a little bit more headroom to go even up to the higher ISOs. And especially the S1 II and the S1R Mark II are very comparable in terms of the noise and the noise structure. But I think there's a ever so slight advantage in the S1R Mark II. Let's dive deeper now into the image quality. And first I have to address that there's an advantage of the S1H which is pretty much unnoticed. This camera has, as the only one of these three, an OLPF, which is really helpful, and I think you can also see it in kind of the smooth texture that the image has. Let's analyze the colors a little bit more, and I was really surprised that each one of those three cameras has a different color. We made sure that we used the exact same setup for every camera, which was the 24-60 from Panasonic, paired with a full stop R&D filter and a matte box. So what you see is a direct representation of the color rendition of the image sensor. And I think we can, or I personally have to say, that the S1H is still my favorite camera when it comes to the colors straight out of the camera from the LUMIX cameras. And also we see that in the green tones that the S1 II has a little bit of a scientific green. The S1R has an overall very magenta cast, I think, and the S1H for me still renders the most neutral colors, and I'm still saying that because I think that also that's the advantage over the S5 IIX and also the other cameras. The S1H has still the greatest colors, and I think also we see that now if we compare them to some skin tones. I like the S1R2 the least. Then the S1 II is actually looking pretty nice, aside from the greens, and the S1H has still, I think, the greatest color of them all. Still, you can manipulate them however you want to, but straight out of camera, that's what I'm seeing. And what I'm also seeing is a difference in dynamic range, because in some scenes the S1R was clipping, whereas the other ones haven't been clipped. So let's dive over to dynamic range. I've said that already in my full review about the S1 II, that this camera has a very impressive dynamic range. The other cameras aren't bad by any means. They are still in the exposure latitude in a reasonable range of 7.5 stops. But you definitely see that the dynamic range is mapped differently in the S1R2. So in the S1R2 you have more shadow detail than you have in the highlights, and that's pretty unfortunate, because if you are outside you find yourself clipping the sky where it isn't clipped, for example on the S1H or also on the S1 or on the S1 Mark II. So it still has the same exposure latitude from 7.5 stops than the S1H, but it has more stops in the shadows except for the highlights. And personally, I prefer more highlight retention, and that's probably also the reason why I don't really like the S1R2 that much. But I'm pretty impressed of the 9 stops of exposure latitude that we get out of the S1 Mark II. That's really impressive, and I still have to say that many of you are waiting for my comparison to my full-fledged Red Dragon, which has the same exposure latitude, so stick to the channel if you want to see that one in the near future. Let's talk about high frame rates, and the newer cameras are no match for the S1H. Just kidding, the S1H isn't really great when it comes to high frame rates, but here on the S1R Mark II as well as the S1 Mark II we can record up to 4K 60 uncropped. Also on this one we have open gate uncropped, and 4K 120 is really interesting because in the S1E2 it is oversampled. And I think you can already see it if you compare them side by side. There's a little bit more detail in the 4K 120 compared to the 4K 120 from the S1R Mark II, which is kind of line skip, pixel bin, whatever it is. So when it comes to high frame rates, this camera, as it has the fastest sensor, is the best one. So what does it tell us in the end? So I think probably if you're a video shooter, then the S1R2 isn't the greatest option. Personally, for me, it has too much megapixels. The color science is not really that there. It's a great camera, don't get me wrong, but also the dynamic range distribution is kind of a little bit odd for me. So I much prefer the S1 II over the S1R2. But there's still the S1H with the OLPF, which is never to underestimate, the great color science and also the body with the timecode integration and everything like that. So that one means for me that I can integrate the S1H more nicely into a cinema workflow using alongside Red cameras and other cameras, because it has all the features that you need. This one here is great as a solo cam for content creators or also video shooters in that matter, because it packs a ton of feature, great dynamic range, great slow motion. But the S1H is also a little bit older and pretty cheap to get right now. So it's kind of the question, but still for me the S1H has its place, and also the S1 has its place. Both are great cameras, and yeah. Thanks so much for watching, and yeah, please subscribe to the channel, and I'm gonna see you in my next one. Cheers!